It sounds like a frightening Final Jeopardy question. Ted Kaczynski, Ramzi Youssef, Timothy McVeigh, Eric Rudolph. Who are the most notorious bombers in recent American history? Believe it or not, at one point, all 4 of them lived in the same part of the same prison. And decades after their crimes, we continue to learn more of the hows and whys. Nashville investigative journalist, author, and professor Becca Andrews has just released her first ever podcast. American Shrapnel tells the story of Olympic, abortion clinic, and gay bar bomber Eric Rudolph. If you were around in the South in the 90s, you'd remember the wilderness search for Rudolph that lasted a full 5 years. But Becca sees much more than a backwoods hate crime retold.
There are all of these points in the story where he's doing things that should have set off alarm bells, right? That should have gotten him arrested, or at least put him on the radar of the authorities. And he just slips through time and time and time again. No one knows this guy's name really, but he's so influential in right-wing extremist circles and in what right-wing extremism has become.
I'm Demetria Kalodimos. It's Banner and Company. I know you're based in East Nashville, but you come from West Tennessee, right?
Bells, Tennessee. Very small town. Crockett County is probably more recognizable. And Crockett's kind of this cluster of 5 small towns, about an hour and a half out of Memphis.
What has ever happened in Crockett County besides being the birthplace of you?
Oh, they should put a sign up, don't you think? Sure. I don't mean that. They probably do not want to do that. I've written way too much about my hometown. There's a lot of cotton, a lot of Friday night football. It was actually a really great place to grow up. I don't ever want to live in a small town again, I don't think. But there's something really special about the kind of community that exists in a small southern town. So I'm grateful that I got to grow up with that.
And are you generations deep there?
No, actually. And this was a source of tension growing up because, most people are. So if you don't have a last name that's on a road sign, for example, you're new. Even if you've been there for a minute, you're new. So I did always kind of carry this baggage of not feeling like I quite fit in for some of those reasons, but it worked out.
I am picturing you as the kind of kid who loved the write a story type assignment.
Oh, yeah. Anything writing. I was in marching band. I wore too much eyeliner. I shopped at Hot Topic, that kind of kid. Very angsty. But then, I don't know, I think that's part of being an artist, right? You sort of go through that intense period of realizing oh, I have all of these feelings and thoughts about the world and know where to put them. And then you figure out I do have somewhere to put them. And you get to kind of grow into that. So,
as a marching band person myself, I've got telepathy here. Clarinet?
Yes, but only during concert season. Marching season, I was something else. Color guard.
Oh, yeah.
I lost a tooth to it.
Did the flag hit you in the mouth?
It was really windy, and I was doing the tosses over and over, and I got a little cocky, and the wind got the better of me and came down and knocked my tooth out. But I like to tell, particularly if it's a dentist that I don't like, I like to tell them that I got into a fight.
Oh, it's a much better story, isn't it? Yeah. Your first taste of a newsroom, though, I think got you hooked.
It did, yeah. That was the Jackson Sun in Jackson, Tennessee. So I, felt like I needed to go to a metropolitan paper. So I went a county over for career day in 8th grade. And I just it was something just clicked, the moment that you go into a newsroom, or at least back then, you go into a newsroom and there are people just running around everywhere. The pace is undeniable. People are talking on the phone. They're talking to each other. They're doing everything they can to meet the deadline. They're going in and out to be in the field. And I loved that energy, and I loved that freedom. I would always get really restless in school, like sitting at a desk all the time. So I loved the idea of being able to go out and report and tell stories that way. So it looks a little different now than it did back then, but the basics are the same.
Was MTSU your first byline when you saw your name in print?
Was MTSU my first? No. I had a column at the county paper when I was 15 or 16 that I like live in fear of someone digging up. It was called High School Happenings. I don't even remember what I wrote, and I hope to God that it's like buried somewhere and no one ever finds it. But I would like pitch in at my county paper. I was just kind of desperate. You
needed an outlet.
I needed an outlet, and I also needed security. Like growing up in a small town, not having a lot of money, I sort of lived with this feeling of this can't be it, right? Like this, and I need to make more for myself, for my family. So like the second I could, I was, working, I was writing for the school paper, and I was writing for the county paper, and just like anywhere that would publish me or take me. I had like an angsty blog, So I was very determined from a very young age, which is a double-edged sword.
So grad school at Berkeley.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was I'm so grateful for that time and to have gotten to go. And then I stayed in the Bay Area for 8 years, and it was incredible.
Yeah, that had to be a culture shock.
Yes, very much so. Like the first time I went grocery shopping, it was at a Trader Joe's, and we had a Trader Joe's in Nashville at this point, but I'd never been. I'd been shopping at Kroger like everyone else, and I couldn't find stuff on my grocery list. I had to like ask someone for help, and I think he was very charmed by this like Southern girl being like, what for example, like what is quinoa? And he's like, whew, okay.
Although I forgive you because it took me forever to know what acai was.
Yeah, same.
I was so afraid to say that out loud. I was just like, I just point at it.
Yeah, same.
You've written for a lot of big name publications. Is this your first podcast?
It is.
Who chose the subject matter, the Eric Rudolph saga?
So at the time I was working for Reckon Media, which no longer exists, story of media in 2025. But the guy who's now our executive producer, John Hammondtree, came to me and was like, hey, I love the work that you've done on abortion rights and anti-abortion extremism. I have this story that, I think a lot of people here in Alabama know, but they don't know. And I think it'd make a really good podcast. Would you consider coming on for it? And I was terrified because no one had ever asked me to do like a full podcast project like that. And podcasts always seemed like maybe a little bit too cool for me. But I said yes, and we had this meeting at this like coffee shop in Birmingham. I drove down for it. I was working remotely from Nashville, but the job was based in Birmingham. So I drove down and I met John Archibald, who's my co-host. And we were sitting there with John Hammondtree. I just called him Hammondtree and Archibald because it's easier.
I know every man in my career life by their last name.
Yeah, yes.
Sometimes I have to work to think of what their first name is.
Yeah, same. People will be talking about them. They'll be like, oh, John. And I'm like, who? But yeah, we were sitting in this coffee shop and we were talking about it. And I had done the classic thing of, I'm this crazy type A person who like can't help themselves. So I had been like reading everything I could find on the Eric Rudolph case, and I like had all this stuff in my head. And Archibald hadn't covered it for 20 years. So, they kept asking him questions about the case and I kept answering it, which was probably really irritating. But I was also irritated with him for not knowing. Because to me, I'm like, oh, you come to this meeting and you're just completely unprepared. Like, this guy, blah, blah, blah. So I walked away from that meeting thinking this is never, ever going to work, the two of us. Like, there's no way. Certainly not the three of us. Like, I don't know. And like fast forward 3 years and I can't imagine my life without him and Trina Archibald. We're constantly in communication. They're the creative partners I've always dreamed of in a lot of ways.
Was Archibald pissed that you knew too much?
Yeah, he was annoyed. He was like, who is this like young girl sitting here like rattling off the answers? Like it was clear he was like, this little know-it-all, like this little shit. And he wasn't wrong. I was being completely obnoxious, but I also just, I couldn't help myself. And I think he's learned to love it about me.
Interesting, because there's obviously a generational gap.
There is.
You've got someone that was a working journalist when this whole story started, and someone who was, what, 5 years old?
That's actually probably my favorite thing about the podcast is our like generational differences and the way that we speak across generations in the podcast. It kept it really interesting and I don't know, just a really fun dynamic.
Set it up for us, because there are going to be listeners to this who have no clue who Eric Rudolph was, what he did.
Yeah. So Eric Rudolph, most people know of him because he bombed the Olympics in Atlanta in the 90s. But most of the time people don't even know the name of the bomber. They think like, oh, Richard Jewell. It's like, no, he didn't do any of that. He was just blamed for it for a hot minute. And this is something that we've talked a lot, the three of us, about how no one knows this guy's name really, but he's so influential in right-wing extremist circles and in what right-wing extremism has become. So he bombed the Olympics, he bombed a lesbian bar in Atlanta, an abortion clinic in Atlanta, and then finally an abortion clinic in Birmingham. So he's gotten away with all of these bombings, and he would have continued to get away with it, I think, except this college kid, was doing his laundry and looked out the window after the explosion and saw one man walking away and decided to follow him, which I can't get over. Like, who does that? His transmission was leaky. There were all of these, he's a black man in a predominantly white neighborhood asking people for help. They're like saying no because Alabama, but also just because the general racism of the United States. But like he was the key to identifying this bomber. So not only are we looking at Rudolph kind of in this grand trajectory of like, these were early indications of where right-wing extremism was headed. And this was the like fringe ideology that we should have been alarmed at in the 90s. We should have been more alarmed at. But it's also sort of this story of hope, right? Where like there is this guy who's willing to just like pursue this dangerous person on foot for the sake of justice and truth.
It's Banner and Company. I'm Demetria Kalodimos. We'll be right back.
Getting ready to step into your career era? Set yourself apart with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Hone your skills with apps like Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and more, powered with the latest in creative AI. Students save over 55%, so you can build a portfolio you're proud of. Launch your future with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Visit adobe.com/students to learn more.
American Shrapnel took a full 3 years to report. Becca and her reporting partner, two-time Pulitzer winner John Archibald, got the first look at the official FBI files and interrogation tapes. It is the deepest dive ever into Rudolph's heart of darkness.
He would either be famous or infamous.
I just think the son of a bitch was mean. I think he was evil.
He was either going to do something great or he was going to do something that was just going to shock the hell out of everybody.
There's no way he was not somehow assisted in his years on the run a little bit.
We were looking around for people with military training, anti-government views, and we had easily, a dozen suspects who fit all those things.
Had Had you delved into the Birmingham bombing at all in your abortion reporting?
I was aware of it, but I hadn't really dug into it. I mean, the research that we did for this podcast, God bless libraries, first of all. Like, every library in this country
Yes.
should be paid more. We should all be going to libraries. We should all be supporting libraries, because we asked for the FBI files through the Birmingham Special Collections group in the Birmingham Library.
So you didn't have to do FOIA or Freedom of Information. Mm-mm. They were already out.
They were already out, but they weren't. They were like in a warehouse somewhere. And this woman who works with special collections at the Birmingham Library was like, I am going to get these files. And bless her, like, she did it. Like, we were the first people, the first journalists to get to go through this incredible archive.
What are we talking? Just banker box after banker box, or were they digital?
No. I'm talking banker boxes. There were some tapes too. There were videos of some of the FBI interrogations, which was great sound for
gold.
the podcast. But also just everyone the FBI interviewed over the course of this case, there's like diagrams figuring out the trajectory of the explosives and how the bombs changed over time. And it's wild. And I'm amazed that none of us lost our eyesight in that basement, like going through all of these files. Yeah. But man, it gave the podcast this rich texture that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
No kidding. I mean, once you get recorded material, and provided that it's been preserved and it isn't, brittle and falling apart, that's just a complete game changer.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Rudolph's family, as this long hunt for him ensued, I mean, they knew who they were looking for. I remember there were wanted posters and everything, but no one knew where he was. And his family made news as the hunt went on in a really bizarre way. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but you can look this up in news archives as well. But tell us what happened.
Yeah, so the family was really interesting. The family is kind of where the extremism started. At some point, Rudolph's mom moved the family to Chanel City, Missouri, to follow this preacher named Dan Gayman. Dan Gayman is a leader in the Christian identity movement, which is not what we understand Christianity to be broadly. It's this idea that the only true Christians are white people, that Jewish people are the literal descendants of Satan. There's all kinds of just like racist awfulness within that. But that's kind of a key part of understanding Rudolph's faith and his ideas about the world and why he did these horrible things and why he continues to think the horrible things that he thinks. But at one point, for example, the moment that I think you're alluding to, the FBI is interviewing the family over and over. They're getting really tired of it. You also have to remember that these are people who had a deep distrust in the government.
Right.
They didn't like the government. So to suddenly have the feds poking around their own family is just a whole nightmare. It's a nightmare. And at one point, one of the brothers in protest sets up a video camera and saws off his hand. And it's a clean, just straight through the wrist, and says, this is for the FBI. Immediately, he gets the hand and leaves the video camera, and they go to the hospital where the hand is reattached. The hand apparently is in perfect working condition, in case anyone was curious, because it was such a clean cut. But
shout out to those doctors wherever they were. I'm
saying in rural North Carolina, wow. But there was this idea of, maybe it was a biblical reference to, if your right hand causes you to sin, it's better to cut it off than to continue to sin. So yeah, it is one of those stories that is just wild at every single turn, honestly.
I had no idea that Rudolph had so many ties or relative ties to the Nashville area. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So his sister-in-law, ex-sister-in-law, Deborah Rudolph, is still in the area. She was a key source for this podcast, and also just a really fun person to talk to. She's one of those like true Southerners who talks in like Southernisms, which I have a special fondness for. But she told us a lot about Rudolph would come to Nashville to move pot. He grew marijuana on federal land in North Carolina.
On federal land?
On federal land, Army Corps of Engineer land. Just because. And he would transport it back to Nashville, and then Deborah would help him distribute it. And it was in really high demand because apparently it was really great weed, honestly. So he went overseas to Europe and got some seeds that he smuggled back in the heel of his boot and planted them in North Carolina. And apparently it was just really good stuff. So it sold like hotcakes. And Nashville had a great market for it. So that was kind of his business ties.
What
here.
years are we talking here?
We're talking the early 90s. And then, just before that, he had been in the Army at Fort Campbell.
Right.
So when he was off duty, he was coming down to Nashville to see his girlfriend. And he was coming down to Nashville to, we talked to someone who ended up not going on the record with us, but told us this anecdote about how Rudolph and some guys from Fort Campbell would come down to visit the gay bars to do gay bashing, to like find gay people to beat up, which is kind of like, there are all of these points in the story where he's doing things that should have set off alarm bells, right? That should have gotten him arrested or at least like put him on the radar of the authorities. And he just like slips through time and time and time again. I'm also really fascinated by his time at Fort Campbell because I think we've consistently seen some extremist ideology come out of the military.
Timothy McVeigh.
100%. And that's not like, obviously that's not to say that that's, the entire military or all veterans are extremists. I don't believe that at all. But there is something there, something that we've done a really poor job of rooting out, I think. And so that's something that I think about a lot as we're trying to think about the modern day implications of Rudolph as well.
And I know you point out, at least in the episode that I recently listened to, you point out like a technique for carrying heavy things that he probably learned straight out of the military.
Yeah, a lot of the FBI interviews with people who were in the Army with him at Fort Campbell, a lot of them are about, what did he learn in his training here? So figuring out the Alice pack that you're referencing, learning about what he learned as far as constructing explosives, doing reconnaissance, all of that stuff. So, the military was part of Rudolph's training.
Have you ever wondered why he didn't explode something here? I mean, this is a city where we've had lots of bombers. My most cynical self thinks that eventually he would have made his way here had Jermaine Hughes not pursued him and the authorities had not been able to identify him. But yeah, I don't know. It does seem like it had some of the same markings of the other cities, Atlanta and Birmingham, that he was targeting. So interesting thing about bombs too, and we learned this with the Unabomber who did strike in Nashville. Bombs have signatures. They're very personal works of intellectual, if you want to use that word or misuse that word, endeavor. Like people sort of have a trademark. Yeah,
and that was where a lot of his like Army training was reflected. And then the other thing was the specific nails that he used was something that the feds were able to, used to show that all these bombs have been created by the same person, so that they were on the right track in pursuing Rudolph.
Like where they were purchased and how long they were and little marks on them and stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. Who did you find in your research and going out there and interviewing that maybe others have not? Or who really gave you you mentioned the sister-in-law was a great source. Mm-hmm. Did you find some other people that were kind of in the shadows?
We did. A few of them only talked to us on background, so wouldn't be recorded. One of them is still considering being recorded, so there might be a bonus episode.
Great.
I think we did a really thorough job of telling the Birmingham story, which often gets left behind in this conversation, even though Birmingham was kind of the pivot point. We talked to Diane Durzis, who owned the clinic that was bombed. And, the interview with her was really chilling because she has this entire career where she has lost people she loved to anti-abortion extremism. She lost people she loved in this bombing. She lost Sandy Sanderson, who was the guard. She nearly lost Emily Lyons, who was the nurse at her clinic. And we also talked to Memory Creswell, who was injured in the Atlanta lesbian bar bombing. And her, how you have those interviews as a journalist where you're like, this one is going to stick with me forever. I'm going to be thinking about this interview for the rest of my life. That is that interview for me. She's this conservative woman from the Mississippi Delta, and her injury, she nearly died, and the media outed her. We outed her. I mean, I wasn't alive at the time, but the way that damaged her and the trauma that she has from the bomb itself, it goes so deep and it's so profound. But she's such a, I hate saying fighter because that sounds really cliche, but she is. She's genuinely tough and smart and has done a lot of work to get to where she is today. And I found her story really compelling. We devoted most of episode 5 to her, partly because it was just such an incredible interview, and not a lot of people have talked to her either. And she was skeptical of me at first, which is fair. She's conservative. I write about abortion rights. You Google my name and all of this stuff comes up. So it took me a minute to be able to convince her, hey, I really am genuinely interested in your story. I don't have a political agenda that comes with my work. I really just want to know. I have my beliefs. I have who I am, but I really just want to know who you are and what happened here.
Yeah. Combine that with the Richard Jewell debacle, and you have media sin after media sin.
So
in
many.
This one story.
I mean, that was another thing, is it was a good opportunity for us to kind of reckon with the damage that was done by our industry. And we do that in the podcast. And I think Archibald in particular has done a lot of that since he was there, and he's seen just the drastic change from what media was like in the 90s versus today. But yeah, it's just a good lesson in journalism ethics.
I've got to tell you, true confession. I was getting on the media bus to go back for the night in Centennial Park when the bomb went off.
Oh my God.
And went back, got the photographer I was working with, and then we proceeded to be up all night covering the aftermath. I mean, it was, talk about one of those things you'll never forget.
Yeah.
In your career. And I will give an extraordinary shout out to our news director, who's a pretty well-known guy in journalism circles, Al Tompkins. When everyone was descending on the Richard Jewell house, we never went. And I mean, everyone in the world, and we were an NBC affiliate, and NBC was probably the greatest sinner in the bunch, in my opinion. We never did put forth that story, and we had long conversations on the phone because the whole group is in a scrum somewhere, and you're still sitting in the workspace twiddling your thumbs. But we did the right thing. Little old Nashville did the right thing.
We
I love
to
it.
hear it.
Yeah. It's Banner and Company. And my guest is Nashville journalist and author Becca Andrews. We'll be right back. You've said that sometimes being a woman gets in the way of your work.
Just a little.
Yeah, I've got stories too, believe me.
I'm sure.
Give me an example, because people really do not understand unless they've been sitting in your clogs, standing in your clogs. By the way, everyone, she's got fantastic red Swedish original clogs on,
I really love
which
these
go great
shoes.
with red hair. So
Thank you.
yeah.
My goodness. I mean, overall, I wrote this piece for Mother Jones when the Clint Eastwood movie about Richard Jewell was coming out, because he had changed the narrative where the female reporter in the movie has sex with her source, because of course. And I was so mad. I remember I was in the Mother Jones break room, just ranting about this while I was refilling my coffee for the 14th time that day. And my editor was like, I don't know why you're standing here talking to me about this. Get your ass to your desk and write. And I did. And he was like, yeah, this is great. I made 3 tweaks. Let's put it up. And the reason I was so angry about that was because we as women carry that media representation of us, which on the whole is not true, into the field, where men expect us to be little more than sex toys. They don't expect us to be smart. They don't expect us to be there for a job. They think oh, here's someone I can flirt with and maybe she'll. This affects us in our reporting, this stereotype that's completely false. Not to say it hasn't happened. It's happened recently.
But can we please get beyond that trope?
Can we please get beyond that trope? There are so many of us who practice journalism in a deeply thoughtful and ethical way. That's not to say I'm perfect, obviously not, but this is the closest thing I have to a religion, So to equate it with something that tawdry and that shallow is just infuriating to me. So when this podcast opportunity came up, I made Archibald and Hammondtree read this piece. But I felt that kind of sexism acutely throughout this process. Not from my
Coworkers, no.
Coworkers. But for
do you
example,
think that was the nature of the people that you were talking to, also coming from this world?
Yes, and I also think that so much of sexism is insidious. I think if I said this to any of those people, they would be horrified. But what would happen is we would go into a room. It's, these 2 men that I adore and me. My ethos with interviewing is, as we've talked about, I'm up till 2 a.m.
Over-preparing.
Over-preparing, right. I'm driving myself completely crazy to make sure that I know what I need to ask. And Archibald, one of the ways that we balance each other out is that I'm an over-preparer and he's more of the I'll charm them into just saying whatever they want to say. And so he's way more easygoing than I am, which again is a great balance for us. But if we were interviewing a male source, which we interviewed a lot of male sources for this podcast, more often than not, they would, even if I was asking the question, they would look at him.
Right. They'd answer.
Or they would look at Hammondtree, who's over there recording, right? He's not asking, he's asking some questions every now and then, but for the most part, he's over there with a mic. They would not look at me. There would always be this one point in the interview, though, where they would look at me. And it would be a point where they were talking about how many women found Rudolph sexually attractive. And they would look at me like I was supposed to have an opinion on that. It's just yeah, I stayed up till 2 making notes on this for this. This is great. Awesome. Love this for me. It's infuriating. It's There was also one man who, after I left their room to go get more batteries or something like that, and he turns to Archibald and he says, "You're such a good mentor to her." It's like, we both have a book out. We both have published a book. We both have careers. Like, he's my colleague. He's not my mentor. That's not how this works. Like, I love him dearly. I learn a lot from him. I hope he learns a lot from me too. Like, what? Why? And there was another experience where a man was asking me about the project, and he was a fan of Archibald's, which everyone should be. He's fantastic. And he goes, "Oh, so you're like the assistant on the podcast?" I was like, "No, I'm the co-host." He's like, "Oh, but Archibald did all like the writing and reporting, right?" I'm like, "No, I'm a partner on this podcast, an equal partner." It was so frustrating to feel like I had to keep justifying my existence in that way, you know?
I know better than you know I know. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that you said this is like a religion to you. Mm. And with that said, you're teaching. You're a teacher.
I am. I love teaching.
And what do you make of today's journalism students? Because there's not going to be the opportunity to make the sort of living that some of these journalists made in the past. There are way too many platforms and choices and people to rise to the top now. You've got to really love it.
Yeah, you do. And even if my students don't go into journalism, they come with such a cleverness and a curiosity into the classroom, and they really fight for their educations. I teach at Western Kentucky University. So, a lot of these kids are not coming from privileged backgrounds. A lot of them have had to fight for a lot. And I really admire that. And I think for a lot of them coming into journalism, it's the first time they've felt like someone has given them permission to ask questions and to not just accept the status quo and to really think through why the things are that they are. And God, it's such a privilege to get to be that person in their lives. It's incredible. I love it a lot.
Your students have got to be jazzed about this podcast coming out.
They're so psyched. I think they're mostly psyched that they don't have to listen to me complain about it anymore because it's been 3 years. I've only been teaching for 2, but I think they're like, they've been very much like, when is it coming out? So I think they're...
You think it's inspired them to dig deep?
I don't know. I hope so. I think that's what any educator would hope.
I don't want to give him the last word, but as we sit today, Rudolph famously tried to make some money writing a book of his own, and the court was...
Which one?
Yeah, exactly. He's at Supermax, which is where the Unabomber was too.
He's on Bombers Row with a bunch of other bombers.
Really? Mm-hmm. Like who?
Like the Boston Marathon bomber. McVeigh was there. It's not anymore, obviously. One of the 9/11 bombers, and I think the Unabomber, actually. Wow. I think.
With no chance of getting out.
No. Well, there wasn't until now we have President Trump, who likes to pardon people who committed acts of violence in the name of abortion. So
Does that worry you?
No. Yes. 100%. Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, that this moment in general worries me, that that the FACE Act, the Freedom to Access Clinic Entrances Act, doesn't exist anymore, that he's told the Department of Justice, hey, we're just not going to prosecute these cases anymore. That concerns me, that there were all of these anti-abortion people who had violated the FACE Act that were pardoned pretty much immediately after he took office. Worries me. I mean, it all worries me.
Did you guys attempt to reach Rudolph?
We did. We each wrote a letter, multiple, nothing, which is fine, honestly.
If he called tomorrow, what would you do?
People love asking that question. And I kind of hate my answer for it, but I don't know that he could say anything that matters at this point. You know, what could he possibly say that would change the story or affect it in any way? Like we know why he did it. he left behind all of these reasons. They're horrible reasons. They're reasons that are rooted in misogyny and racism and hate. But he's not going to say anything enlightening. So, I wouldn't be sweating it, I guess.
Banner and Company is a production of the New Nashville Banner. This episode is produced by Shauna Reynolds with help from Steve Harouche. It's edited and mastered by me. The original music is by Verlin Thompson. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or go to NashvilleBanner.com. You're in good company. Our final questions in the fishbowl.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Should I be scared? Is this going to be like that scene in Dune where he puts his hand in and something attacks him?
Let's hope not. No, it's pretty harmless.
Oh, my God. From Tamara Saviano. What is
a childhood memory that makes you weep?
I'm an older sister. My younger sister is 13 months younger than I am. And I was kind of a little shit to her. Like, I was kind of awful. And looking back, I don't like that about myself. And there are a lot of reasons for it that I see clearly now as an adult. But man, I cringe. Like, because she's my favorite person in the world. She's my best friend. She's the best person I know. And so I wish I had been less of a little jerk to my little sister.